We were asked to review Chaka Khan's I Feel For You by Rashid Ogunlaru, who is a speaker, life coach, and singer-songwriter himself. And Rashid, we took up the challenge and reviewed the album as you asked us to. Massive #1 single with I Feel For You, which, as far as I'm concerned, is almost like a superstar medley. You know, you've got Prince, who wrote the track and produced it. You've got Grandmaster Flash, who's hot off the heels of White Lines Don't Do It. You've got Stevie Wonder on harmonica. This really is sort of like a black supergroup, really, in its own way, and I Feel For You, as a result, clearly demonstrates that success. I think Grandmaster Flash is probably my favorite part, together with the harmonica. I like Chaka's vocals at the end of the track when she really goes for it. It does kind of seem different to me for Chaka Khan, and I will say this about Chaka Khan and I Feel For You. My problem with songs which are supposed to be sexy is that in order for that song to come across to me as sexy, the person singing it has to be sexy. And I think I've never found Chaka Khan to be sexy, really, in any way, shape, or form. She's an attractive woman. She's a great singer. She's attractive. But sexy and her singing a sexy song, somehow there's a disconnect for me. Now, I know that a lot of people will disagree with me. This is a #3 record in the US. It's probably one of her most famous songs. I Feel For You is, again, it timestamps that era. It was never one of my favorites, but I understand why people like the song. This Is My Night is the second single. It's the follow-up to I Feel For You, and it may as well be called Ain't Nobody Part 2, because it riffs on what Ain't Nobody does, which is a great hit from the year before, but we don't want another version of Ain't Nobody, and this is, to me, is what it sounds like. I like it, and I love that they're going hell for leather with the bells and whistles here. Hell for leather with the latest sounds, and the latest scratching, and the latest kind of breakdance sort of sounds, and I get it, you know, but the problem with that up-to-date production is it very sort of easily freezes the next year, and it's like, oh yeah, that's very last year. And I think that she's sort of trapped here in some of these songs with last year's production. Arif Mardin is the primary producer on this album, and I was fortunate enough to meet Arif Mardin after I served him dinner at Isabella's one night, and that's one of my greatest claims to fame. So happy to have met him. Although, having said that, and the fact that he didn't really like my music when he heard for it, I'm glad he didn't like my music, because this album really, I think, doesn't really do much for Chaka across the board. Yes, she's a great singer, but as with a lot of great singers, the songs are just not, they don't mean anything. Here's the other thing, I can barely understand a word she's saying. So I'm relying on the music and her voice more as an instrument, which, you know, jazz people take great pride in, you know, this kind of scatting style, which is, you know, where you can't quite make up the lyrics, and I struggle with her style. I understand that she's a legendary singer, and she riffs, and she, you know, she sings her ass off, and she sings way better than so many people. Yes, absolutely, I get all of that. But it makes listening to one of her albums a little bit difficult, because I can't really decipher what she's talking about, and I've only got a limited amount of time to be able to listen to the album and give a fair review of it. So lyrical content is nowhere on the map here. Stronger Than Before is a mid-tempo, forgettable ballad. It's not forgettable in terms of songwriting credits. Guess what? Burt Bacharach's on there, so's Carol Bayer Sager, and they've definitely written better songs. My Love Is Alive, the production holds it in 1984. I really like the harmonies on the chorus here, but I will say that, you know, on a second listen, actually it grows, and, you know, now you're warming up to, like, the production style, and now you're being more forgiving and saying, okay, yeah, I'm going to let this wash over me a little more, and it's funky, and she's a great singer. The song's okay, you know, nothing great here. Hold Her, you know, starts off really promisingly. You hear Hold Her, and it's like this great vocal intro, and you think she's going to do something interesting. Nope. Straight back into the Buffalo Gal style intro with a like this sort of like hip hop kind of thing. And I'm sorry, I just don't buy Chaka Khan in this role as like break-dancing diva. I mean, it kind of worked okay as a one-off for I Feel For You. I don't want a whole album of you like being breakdancers' best friends, and definitely you're down with the boys, of course you are, but I don't know, it just doesn't, you know, I like her when she's elegant, I like her when she's jazzy. When she's trying to be contemporary, she just kind of comes over as a little bit sort of forced and contrived. The voice, never. The voice soars. The voice is Chaka Khan. We understand that. Fire, fire, double fire. I get it. Through the Fire, which is probably the most famous song on the album, is ballad perfection. This is my favorite song on the album, without a doubt. It's probably one of her most recognizable songs. It doesn't have all of that sort of high-tech nonsense that's going on from around 1984. It just kind of acts as a song. It does its work, and it's brilliant. You know, it's just an absolutely great and touching ballad, you know. You say you're going to play it smart with Through Before We Start. I love the wisdom of the lyrics, and, you know, clearly the songwriting teams on Chaka's stuff mean well. You know, I mean, it can't be easy writing for this incredibly massive voice, but Through the Fire, they really, song and singer, connect beautifully. Well done on this one. Caught in the Act is a nice jazz fusion number. It's a really catchy chorus, and it grows on you. You're like, I like this. Now, this is where she's really in her element. I like Caught in the Act. It's cheeky, it's saucy, it's what Chaka Khan does so well as an Aries. It's great bass, great bounce, it's a good groove. I really like Caught in the Act from the album. Chinatown sounds like a movie soundtrack from the 80s, and that's by no means a glowing recommendation. If you think of any kind of like cheesy 80s movie you've heard, you plonk this on top of it and you've got a winner. And you're straight down the dumper with a flop. It's just sort of, as she helped to write this song, I don't hear anything that matters. I hear a voice, and at this point, it's track 10. It's like, okay, I'm ready for the album to end. You know, I don't want to feel that way, but I do. Chinatown. I'm finding actually, apart from China Girl at this time, a lot of people are very fond of using the word China in their records, and almost without exception, it has that kind of quality of made in China, sort of pretty disposable and throwaway. Eye to Eye immediately presents itself as a single. It's classic Chaka. It's the third single from the album. It has a Mary Jane Girl sensibility to it, which makes it likable. It's fairly pedestrian, but it's all hers. She really sings her ass off on this track. La Flamme is again, this French thing. This sort of track would belong more to Grace Jones, to my mind. It has sort of a jazz sensibility. She sings along beautifully. She does that jazz thing that she does. No clue what she's singing about. Hip-hop scratching, there's a plucky bass and guitar. It's all very funky and R&B, and I'm sure makes a lot more sense to people who grew up with this kind of sensibility. I'm more of a pop guy. It's just striking me as a little bit technical and specific and specialist, and I'm not really grooving on it as I would with Grace Jones, who inhabits these kind of tracks. I will say that this was the 5th solo album from Chaka Khan, and I think that there was a lot at stake here. I think, you know, there's big producers and writers on here. We've got Arif Mardin, we've got David Foster, there's Burt Bacharach, Prince is on the scene. It's on the back of Ain't Nobody that this album's been made, because as they realize they've got this sensational opportunity to really capitalize on the success of something that was just a groundswell hit in Ain't Nobody. They achieved it with I Feel For You, but I think what they tried to do was then to turn it into a whole album, which I think was a mistake. I think Through the Fire should have been the follow-up single to I Feel For You. My understanding is that Through the Fire wasn't released as a single, and this was a big mistake. It's definitely a radio hit, but this was her obvious follow-up here, and I feel as though it's a good record, but it lacks a lot of... If they wanted more hits on there, it feels like they wanted more hits. This Is My Night as a follow-up, I think, is a mistake. It just sounds too much like Ain't Nobody. I know, live-wise, if you're going to watch a show of hers, you're going to thoroughly enjoy every part of her performance. She gives everything she's got to what she does. This is less a criticism of Chaka Khan in terms of being a performer, as opposed to being a performer placed into a into a situation or a mold which she's so much greater than. They were trying to contain her within the production values of the 1980s. And, you know, she's all this hair and all this smile and all this character and all this voice, all this jazz, all this funk, all this R&B. And you're sort of trying to sort of squish her into this kind of containing and limiting material, which let's not forget she's had I'm Every Woman at this point, so we know what she's capable of. So when you present this to us as an album of progress, as an album of how she's gotten better or bigger, you're actually selling the artist short. I don't blame Chaka Khan for this. I still think she's a tremendous vocalist and performer on this album. I just don't happen to feel that it showcases her ability to the best of its ability. In final summation of Chaka Khan, I feel for you, 55%. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, recommend it to friends, post comments. Also, if you have an album that you'd like to hear reviewed, we welcome your requests.